So naturally, there has been much merriment within the Paper Mario community, with the Thousand Year Door remake coming very, very, very soon. But it seems that no matter what, wherever anyone is talking about the game, there is also a debate that has been raging. It's raging by the day. Pretty much anywhere anyone's talking about Thousand Year Door, just this darn topic just won't stop coming up. It is, of course, the fact that the game runs at 30 FPS when the original ran at 60. And just to get it out of the way right off the bat, personally, I don't mind. Sure, in a perfect world, it would run at 60, but it's not a perfect world. It's really not a big deal. To me, it seems almost absurd to get so hung up on something like this. This game is a miracle. It's a miracle that we are getting this. This is the most joy I have felt as far as Paper Mario goes in such a long time. It's magical. So I don't know, the fact that it's running at 30 FPS, it's really getting under a lot of people's skin, and I don't get it. And here's the thing, I do understand that people got preferences. They have different priorities when it comes to games and how they want their games to be, and I get that. And I do not want to diminish other people's opinions. That's just a thing with me. Overall, I get that people have different perspectives, and you gotta acknowledge that. You gotta just be okay with that, you know? And it's really hard though. It's really, really hard because I am that way, and I don't want to diminish anyone's opinion, but I still am having a hard time with this one. I can't help but feel like we're really focusing on this one small little detail of, again, such a miraculous game, and it's, I don't know, it's kind of a bummer. And so I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts on it, kind of where I'm coming from. Again, I want to acknowledge and appreciate all opinions, but I cannot help but feel like this is only happening because the original was 60 and this is 30, and so now it feels like something that we had has been taken away. I am quite confident. I am completely confident that if the original ran at 30, we would all love it just as much. Just as much, because plenty of games run at 30 FPS. Even back then, it's video games. It's just a thing. I don't think anybody would, not even one person would have criticized it for running at 30. So now the fact that it's running at 30, is that what's getting under people's skin just because it was and now it isn't? Do you know what I mean? It was nice that it ran at 60, but honestly, when I look at this game at Thousand Year Door, I just don't feel that it's needed. It's nice, would be nice, but it's just not necessary. There's so many different games out there, and the whole frame rate thing, it really just comes down to the individual game, the individual type of gameplay. You know, anything that's really action heavy, really fast, shooters, that kind of stuff, even platformers to an extent. I get that. I get wanting to prioritize a high frame rate there. But Paper Mario is just not that to me. It's just absolutely not that. The closest you get to that kind of fast action where you want really just precise frame inputs is in the action commands, but even that is just it's not going to be a problem. It's just not really going to affect how the game plays. If you had to do a command within 4 frames, now it's gonna be 2. Or as some people have pointed out, it doesn't even just come down to the frames that are being displayed to you. The game itself is registering its own sense of time, and it's still gonna translate just fine. Even if they have to make a few tweaks, it's gonna be fine. I don't know, I feel like if you take all games and kind of categorize them into what games need 60 FPS and what are just perfectly okay with 30, I would comfortably, absolutely comfortably, put any Paper Mario game into the 30 category. Origami King. Origami King was 30, and it was fine. No one cared. I don't remember seeing a single person, not saying they don't exist, but Personally, I was around a lot of Origami King discourse. I never saw one person complain that it was 30 FPS. It just didn't matter. It didn't matter at all. And I would say, if anything, the kind of inherent, more like choppy nature of 30 FPS, it kind of goes along with the whole like papercraft style of these games. It kind of makes it seem a little bit more, animated, like kind of traditionally, and that doesn't mean that like I prefer it at 30. I would take 60 if I could get it, but like, I don't know, out of all the games that have to run at 30, I feel like these are even better suited than most just because of the style. So that's why I really personally I really don't get it. Like, even if it is a preference, I don't know why it would be such a strong preference. You're getting people who are like, I absolutely refuse. This is literally a deal breaker. And I'm like, again, if that's your thing, I can't say you're wrong, because ultimately it doesn't matter what sways your decision one way or the other. Ultimately, you took in the information and you made the decision, and you purchase the thing, yes or no. Play the thing, yes or no. If your choice is no, that's it. It doesn't matter why that happened. Doesn't matter why you came to that conclusion. Then that's it for you. I get that, but I still feel like the attitude kind of surrounding this is very wrong just for a lot of reasons. Like, some people are coming at this from just a purely objectively wrong standpoint. Like, I see so many people with this attitude of like, if the old game ran at 60, how can you give us an old game, but now it runs even worse than the original? That does not apply here. This is not just an upscaling. This is not a port. This is a remake. This is a new game. And like, maybe some of the code, like under the hood, is the same, of like, the way the world was built or whatever. But like, all of the assets, all of the art, every single thing, every pixel that you see is brand new. It's completely new. Like, it's gonna run differently. This is not an old game running worse. This is a new game. And it is true, as a lot of people point out, Metroid Prime Remastered, that was a complete asset remake as well, but that also ran at 60. Okay, I get that. The thing is, this whole thing is a lot more complex than a lot of people give it credit for. One, it has been all but confirmed that Metroid Prime, even the original, was created using some kind of voodoo magic or something. Just some weird, like a wizard or something was involved in the process. The developers over at Retro Studios are so incredibly talented that like somehow they were able to make it work, and I do appreciate that. But I'm not willing to let that set a bar for every other remake ever, because like every game is different, and they probably employed a lot of different kind of tricks to make it work that might not necessarily work with Paper Mario. Like this idea that Nintendo is being lazy or whatever because they're not willing to put in the time or the effort or the money to make Thousand Year Door run good. Like, it absolutely does not work that way. That attitude comes from a place of ignorance. I'll just say it. Like, that is a misunderstanding of game dev and just like how it works. And like, yes, it is technically possible for a company to just not want to put in the time to make their game run well. Obligatory Pokemon reference. But I do not believe that that's what's happening here. It doesn't make any sense. What they're going with in the game, like, they are prioritizing the visuals more than anything. They're putting a much bigger focus on graphical fidelity and realism versus the way that it runs. They're making a sacrifice. The Switch is only so powerful. Like, blame the Switch, if anything. If they wanted to make sure that the entire game ran at 60 FPS, they would have had to make big sacrifices in the visual department. But like, clearly they really wanted to go with that realism, and it looks amazing. And I'm happy that they did. I vastly prefer it this way, because you look at the footage and it's gorgeous. Just the lighting, the reflections, just everything. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And I don't want them to have to have like cranked down a bunch of those effects and made them not look as good, or like dramatically lowered the resolution or something. just in order to get that 60 FPS frame rate. They're leaning into the visuals here because if they didn't, then people would be like, well, why didn't you just port the game? They should have just given us an up-resed port. Like, they didn't want to. They wanted to completely remake it and make it look like totally modern. And here's the thing about this game specifically, and it's another reason why you can't make these like really just like broad, silly generalizations, is one of the, I guess I wouldn't call it a selling point, but like one of the things that Thousand Year Door did, like you won't find it like on the back of the box, you know, the back of the box stuff was like, Mario can turn into paper, into a paper airplane and fly around, and it's a new story in a new place, and here's the plot. But like, there was an element to this game that was new over the first game, and that was scenes with a lot of NPCs, or just a lot of characters, a lot of sprites on screen at once. It doesn't happen like a ton, but it happens a good handful of times throughout the game, and that was kind of like one of the game's like wow factors, you know, like, oh wow, this isn't the N64 anymore, this is the GameCube, look what the GameCube is capable of doing. And in scenes like that, even the original struggled to run, and they had to make the sprites like super low res, you know, super low, like the animation was very low frame rate on the individual sprites, and like that is something they had to consider here. They didn't want to have, because like it's possible that they could have maintained 60 FPS for a lot of the experience, but then they would have had to have that frame rate dip dramatically during these scenes, and personally, I would hate that. For me, I will take a consistently low frame rate versus an unstable one, an inconsistent one. I hate frame rate inconsistency. I despise it. Even like in movies, like if you go to someone's house and they have like the motion smoothing thing on their TV, it's not even just that it looks weird when it's smooth, it's that it's not consistent. It's that frame rate goes up and it goes down, and like it just completely takes me out of the experience. So like for Thousand Year Door, yeah, like I wouldn't want these scenes to just like struggle to run and now suddenly it's all choppy when normally it's all smooth. That would completely just kill the moment. Capping the game at 30 FPS in order to keep it completely consistent and to like maintain a great level of just visual fidelity. This was an artistic choice. This was not just a technical blunder, or the developers being lazy or whatever. Like, no, this was literally an artistic choice. It was made because of technical limitations, but they still decided, okay, what do we want the player to experience? What do we want this game to be? Well, they decided they want it to be this way. And I can completely appreciate that, because the alternative, like, yeah, oh, I wish it were 60. Yeah, I wish it were 62. But like the actual realistic alternative is just, it's not good. It's either a game that all the time looks way worse or runs better most of the time, but runs a lot worse a lot of the time too. And just that is not ideal to me. And this whole entire debate is addressed quite neatly by the director of Bayonetta Origins, Cereza and the Lost Demon, whose name I do not know how to pronounce. I am sorry. And this is an actual game developer here. This is someone who really knows what they're talking about. They've made a game, and he has this to say. I can empathize with the devs of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door on Switch with regards to the whole 30 FPS versus 60 FPS situation. We tried for a long time to get Cereza and the Lost Demon running at a stable 60 FPS. We were able to maintain 60 FPS inside the Tir na Nog stages, but it just wasn't possible to keep the same visual fidelity and hold 60 FPS in the forest. My choice was either to have an unlocked frame rate with frequent dips to 30 to 50 FPS, or cap it and hold a stable 30 FPS. The most difficult part of game dev is making choices about what to prioritize. Everything has a cost, both in terms of dev time to implement it and in terms of processing time when the game is running. Ultimately, you simply cannot have everything. Cereza and the Lost Demon may not look visually complex, but there is actually a ton of post-processing going on under the hood. The colors fading in like ink as you move through the world, the shading patterns on objects, the way the world curves to allow you to see further into the distance. All these visual effects have a processing cost. I felt the picture book look was integral to the overall experience, so it was not worth throwing it away to hit 60 FPS. I imagine the team making Paper Mario faced a similar dilemma. It would be one thing if this were an enhanced port of the original game, i.e. the version of Pikmin 1 or 2 for Switch, but this is a full rebuild of the game. I am sure they wanted to use modern techniques to really make the paper aesthetic shine, and these have a cost. All I can say for certain is that the team made the choice that they felt would lead to the best overall experience for players. I promise you, it was not a decision made lightly or out of laziness. I missed out on the original, so I'm looking forward to playing it on Switch. That's awesome. So basically, I get it. If you're bummed that it's 30 FPS and not 60, I get it. And even if that means that you're not gonna buy the game just because of that, I can't stop you. That is your thing. But I do feel like we should all bear in mind what actually goes into game development. Just look at it from the perspective of the developers. Nobody is trying to cheat you out of your 60 FPS. That's not happening. No one is being lazy. Everybody is just doing the best that they can with what they have, and this is what they felt was best for the game. And who knows, if the Switch 2 ends up being backwards compatible, maybe they'll give us a patch or something that makes the game run better. I don't know if that'll happen, but it would be cool. But then that's where someone says, oh, this is Nintendo. They would rather just resell us a definitive version of the game later. Seen it 500 times. These conversations, they all just go the same way. That's the internet. It all just repeats endlessly, forever. At least the game comes out soon.